We are going live. Here we are. We're live. How was everyone out
Yes.
there tonight?
Doing good, doing good.
Should we get a theme song or something?
Our themes. D.
Yeah, like when I'm in the Four Color Fossils, we have a theme song.
We used to have a thing in the bullpen called instant theme song, where you just describe whatever you're doing to a tune, and that's your theme song. Here we are talking about comics. Oh yeah, Wilson, Jared, and Paolo talking comics all night long, and that's your instant theme song.
Yeah,
Whatever we're doing, we describe it in song.
yeah. I saw some podcasts making comments about it that TV series up to the late '80s, they all had theme songs that just told you what the show was about.
Exactly. That's where it comes
The
from.
cartoons were great for that too.
Yeah.
It let you know exactly what was going on.
It gave you the concept in the theme song.
And then we got Seinfeld, and there goes his theme song. The theme
Yeah.
song.
All of a sudden, no theme songs. Theme songs just about went away.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much. Or they're just songs that may have nothing to do with the show itself.
The Sopranos had a brief theme song resurgence because everybody liked it, but that was someone's song. It's kind of like
yeah.
Who sings that? I know who sings that, but I forgot.
I've forgotten totally.
Oh, I'm bad with song titles and names.
And who was it? The Friends theme song was another popular one. That told you what the show was about too.
Mm-hmm.
The Replacements, I think, sang that one. I only know that because I've heard it so many times.
Right.
And there was those guys from France who did the theme songs to all the action cartoons from the 80s. Haim Saban, because they were French Israelis, but they worked and they came up with the theme songs for stuff like Ulysses 31 and Inspector Gadget. And one of my favorites, Jason the Wheeled Warriors. The cartoon itself was kind of lame. I mean, they had a lot of reshot images. It was almost like a Filmation cartoon made by a Japanese studio. But they had the very, very good rock and roll theme song.
Good evening, Mind the Comics. I think I've told the story on here about how I met the woman who did the theme music to Transformers and G.I. Joe. I can't. Anne Bryant.
Mm-hmm.
And she got ripped off from it.
Oh, really?
I met her. She was a friend of my cousin's. I only met her a couple of times at a couple of picnics at my cousin's house. And this was like 20 years ago now. Like the DVDs of G.I. Joe came out. And she noticed her credits were all changed to other people who turned out to be the producer's friends. So the G.I. Joe cartoon had changed ownership a few times. And so they ended up just like not, but she was in a union. So she tried to sue them to get her money. Long story short, I saw her a few years later and she did not get her money, despite having all her paperwork and everything. Turns out the Hollywood music industry is really shady.
Yeah.
Good evening, GC 2001. Breakdown 2001.
Yeah, welcome to the 21st century.
That's some Public Enemy song. I can't remember what. I haven't listened to Public Enemy in many years, so I'm not sure.
I've gone back. Speaking of cartoons, I've gone back. My brother and I have been watching Exo Squad. It's a cartoon that came out in the 90s, around the same time that X-Men cartoon came out. And I did not watch it when it first came out. So I knew very little to nothing about it. And it does not have an opening theme song that tells you about it. It's actually just music. The artwork is very 90s.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very well written and quite surprisingly good. Eventually, I went back to find out why no one really talks about it. And it was like one of those cartoons that were on like Sunday morning at like 6 a.m. or something. Or some crazy time period. And it was one of those where it's like they had a toy line, because that's what these cartoons are made for.
Yeah.
Didn't have a comic book until later. And it only has 2 seasons. But so well written. And the body count of people dying is amazing for a cartoon show.
Exo Squad toys were cool, if I remember correctly.
And they tend to be like a fairly easily adaptable toys. The matter of fact, I think it might have changed once where someone reused the parts for another toy line, because that happens all the time anyway. But amazingly well done, well written, and nothing like I've seen before in that time period.
Yeah.
Yes, it's the usual, good guys versus bad guys. It's the basic story is that you have a group of genetically created people who are pretty much kind of like a slave race. 50 years ago, they had a fight. They got their freedom. Everyone lived happily together. And then all of a sudden, there's an attack. And it turns out that there's these space pirates that that humans are dealing with. And in the middle of that conflict, the genetically altered people decides, hey, we're going to take over. And then a whole big war opens up. And it's like, it was quite amazing. The whole thing happened where it's like the humans were like, we need help. So they went to the pirates that they were already having a war with and teamed up with them. And it's amazing. For a cartoon, it's amazing how much information is let known in bits and pieces that was like, wow, there is a lot of people dying across the board. Where
was the cartoon made?
Where it was made?
Was it Japanese, American?
It's French? American, but it's most likely went to the same studio that were doing the X-Men.
Good evening.
So I don't know where exactly they're located. I haven't deep dived more into it yet. So far it's just the whole initial watching and seeing if it's something that, because it's such a limited amount of episodes, because it was only 2 seasons, I'm only watching one a day to absorb it that way.
And cartoons were the best in the late earlys. That was too late for me. It all depends on what time you were 10 years old. when cartoons were best.
But, even though most of the 80s cartoons were obvious commercials for the toy licenses, there was a lot of good writing in there, because you were beginning to see some crossover with comic books, and there was some comic book people making the jump, hoping to make more money in animation.
Right.
Yeah, good luck with that.
We were actually discussing toy-based comics at the comic shop this week. And we came to the conclusion, I came to this conclusion, they did too, that I don't know anyone who was a fan of Rom the toy. It's like it came and went. It's like there were more fans of Rom the comic than the toy. And we watched a couple of old commercials for the toy too. There was like nothing in that toy line.
No, it was just Rom himself, a 12-inch figure, but that was the company trying to get into the electronics.
Yeah.
That's what that was, where it's like, they had no villains to fight. So there was nothing, nothing toy-wise for it.
You know what they did do in one of the commercials that's on YouTube, of course? They did they visually did a take on the movie Metropolis, the famous silent movie with the woman robot. So they had like an Art Deco background behind Rom, all this dry ice smoke rising up. I was like, oh, look at that. They're doing a little Metropolis.
Yeah, they probably just thought, man, I got a really cool design here. What am I going to do with this?
Has there ever been a comic book adaptation of Metropolis?
Maybe the French have done it?
I don't know. I want to say yes, because I recall seeing a cover done by somebody. But
and it just popped into my head. There's a comic book adaptation by John J. Muth, I think it is, of M, another famous German silent movie. You would think Metropolis would be a natural for a comic book adaptation. It's in the public domain now, isn't it? I don't even know.
It should. I believe it is in the public domain.
Osamu Tezuka did a Metropolis adaptation in a decidedly cartoony style.
Who did? Is he Japanese?
Osamu Tezuka, the guy who invented Astro Boy.
Oh, I thought that was him. That name sounded, but I don't like that guy. But I don't really know him. So wow. Oh, there's an anime adaptation. I guess that was in with the manga. Wow. Europe had some great cartoons. Okay.
There's an adaptation of Metropolis from France in 2011. Author Christophe Girard. It's in black and white.
Anybody ever buy the real Ghostbusters comic book? I never did. So
no, I think they had. I think there were more stories made in the UK, right? The real Ghostbusters stories were made in the UK.
I don't think I picked up any. I may have picked up one or two.
Yeah, I imagine they would be hard to find in high grade because it was probably kids who bought those and got rid of most of them.
Il était une fois dans l'espace as part of an educational series. It was actually co-funded by different European countries, and there was a UK, and it was broadcast in English with a translation made in the UK. As Once Upon a Time Space, and there was also Once Upon a Time Life. D'Artagnan is a Spanish cartoon. It's made by. It was created by a Spanish studio, although animated in Japan. It's known in English as Dogtanian, and it's an adaptation of the Three Musketeers with dogs.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually very funny. It was I watched them when I was 5 or 6.
And I got 7 new comics this week. The first one is kind of weird. It's yet another Cerebus in Hell. But this one actually had 2 covers, because this one is actually not called Vark Devil. This is the alternate cover. This one is actually called Giant Size Public Defenders. So there's another cover that's a Giant Size Defenders cover parody. I don't know what possessed him to make 2 covers, but also the 2 covers that have different print runs on them. This is 588 of 792. The print owner is only 792. And the other one, the print run is 1200. So it's around 2000 print run, which is sort of normal for Cerebus. It dips down anywhere between 1500 to 2500. But last month's, the one, remember the Alf cover that they did the piggyback on the Alf? I forget who it was. For the first time, I saw a Cerebus in Hell in someone's YouTube comic book haul. I was like, whoa. And of course, he only got it for the Alf parody cover.
Right.
But that last Alf one was the worst. It was unreadable. I mean, this tends to be up and down anywhere because it's comic strips by Dave Sim. And he does them sort of by topic. And like the worst issue before last issue was one on Canadian politics. And holy cow, was that unfunny.
Yeah.
And I don't even remember what the last issue had. One of the best covers. The Alf parody cover was good. But the inside, I can't even remember what the topic was, but it was it was the first one I could not make it through to the end of. It was so unreadable. But this one is also double size because it's giant, which I really don't need double size Cerebus in Hell. So I'm just kind of like, oh man, every time he puts out a double size one, I'm like, oh, I should just skip this one because it's double size. I just compare it to Archie's series, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Oh, that's Ghostbusters. Took off recently. Ghostbusters, not so much. Okay. So he's comparing the real Ghostbusters to the Archie Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series, which has taken off more recently. People have begun to notice it.
Yeah, they can't collect the original TMNT, so might as well collect the Archie version.
Yeah,
I do like that cover for Vark Devil. You know, did you?
Yeah, it's a deep cut because it's a Daredevil cover. It's a Frank Miller Daredevil cover,
right?
But the costume is the Golden Age Daredevil.
Yeah,
because in here he had the whole thing is lawyer jokes, and he's got different versions of Daredevil that he's having copyright problems with.
Right, because the original Daredevil's in the public domain.
Right,
So-
right. So he keeps, but I notice, and like most people aren't going to like this because you really have to kind of be interested in Dave Sim. Is a smart guy, and his mind works really weirdly. So it's like you have to be interested in how Dave Sim's mind works in order to be able to like this and follow it. Because sometimes he really doesn't know how to construct a comic strip joke. I mean, sometimes it's like, Dave, you're supposed to be writing something amusing here. And I also noticed with this one, the flaw, like I did like this issue, but the flaw and the stuff I didn't like, and it's not just Dave Sim. I'd call, because Dave Sim is now what you'd call a religious conservative, even though he made up his own religion. He just cherry picked what he liked from Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and that's what he does. He doesn't do anything on the Sabbath. Except read the Quran, the New Testament, the Bible. He made up his own kind of. He merged together his own religion. But there's sort of. I hesitate to call them jokes sometimes, but there's sort of a strain, a pathway in sort of conservative humor that basically is. Look at that over there. That's weird. Ha ha. But there's no joke there. It's just laughing at something they think is weird. And some of that happens with Dave Simon here. He's like, oh, look at those people over there using these weird pronouns. Ha ha. And it's like, well, you really got to construct a joke around that. And it's something that actually on a sort of interpersonal level might work, in that if you see your friend doing something weird in general, like you drink your soda weird, what are you doing? Like, people are always making fun of each other when they do, like, it's like, what are you doing over there? You're putting ketchup on a bologna sandwich? Oh my goodness, what are you, crazy? It's that kind of thing. Only I think when it's like on a broader scale, you need a joke. Like an example of it where they had a joke would be Seinfeld and the eating the candy bar with the fork and knife. Like if you saw your friend eating a candy bar with a fork and knife, you might go, what the heck are you doing? And laugh at him. But if you were going to write a comic strip about somebody.
What do? You eat a candy bar with your hands?
George Costanza. Well, we'll get back to that.
Like
in a
a
second.
savage?
Of course not. Of course not. You lower your face to the plate where the candy bar is, and you eat it.
That became the joke in Seinfeld. It became, all of a sudden, everybody questioned the way they ate a candy bar. And by the end of the series, George saw some random stranger eating a candy bar with a fork and knife.
It was all in one episode.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, they contributed to the English language. Nobody said double dip before the episode where they use the potato.
But if you do a joke where you just say, look at that guy over there, he's eating a fork and knife, he's in the candy bar with a fork and knife, ha ha ha. Well, there's no joke there. And I think that's a strain of sort of mostly conservative humor, where they like to laugh at something that they find weird, which is, like I said, understandable, but it's not a joke. When you're making a comic strip, you kind of need a joke.
Well, it's step one, laugh at it. Step two, how do you make it against the law?
Exactly.
In order to make that joke effective, you need it to be a long joke, and you need to pile on the details.
You need something besides look at that. That's weird. Ha ha. That's not that's not a joke. But I didn't really pick up on that in my head. This issue sort of made me realize that, because it's been a problem all along with this book. Sometimes it's like Dave, give us a joke. Because some of them, there's jokes in them. Or it's constructed to be amusing, or it's constructed to point out something in the world, give you a view of something that's a little askew. But sometimes it's just like, look at that over there. That's weird. Ha ha. And it's like, come on, you got to give me more than that. And he didn't give us, like I said, last issue, which was unreadable. He didn't give us anything, but haha, look at that. That's weird. But the covers are always fun, at least. And you can tell, like, the sales go up and down by if people like that guy on YouTube want to pick it up just for the cover.
Yeah, I could see buying that book, that one that you have in your hands, because of that cover. Just because it's not only a Daredevil parody, it's also a Daredevil parody on top of that.
Okay, so the breaded shrimp goes on after Satan discovers fondue. That's what it says. Satan discovers fondue.
You don't put the breaded shrimp in the fondue.
No.
You put it on the fryer. The fondue is for the unbreaded shrimp. Satan
doesn't do things right. Because the whole concept of Cerebus in hell is he's in hell, and Satan is one of the characters.
I thought the devil was a man of wealth and taste.
Not in here. Well, sometimes he is. So, like, one of the confusing things about last issue, I remember now, was all of a sudden Satan was like the good guy. It was like, because the main characters he's got in here are Dante from Dante's Inferno and Virgil, the Greek poet who's in Dante's Inferno, is giving Dante a tour of hell. I say as if I've ever read Dante's Inferno, but I haven't. And then there's Cerebus. I have a
copy of it around here.
At the end of his series, died and who's now in hell. And all sorts of parody Cerebuses, and all these people being tortured in hell.
You can read X-Men Annual number 3. Then you're all set up for Dante's Inferno.
So it was like, there's supposed to be like nobody good in this.
Mm-hmm.
But then sometimes he needs somebody good to make the jokes work, which he usually uses Dante or Virgil. But in like last issue, he was using like Satan to be the good guy, and I'm like, what? I'm like, am I supposed to take whatever Satan's saying? You assume is evil, or there's some evil intent behind it. That's generally the Satan character. When Satan is being the voice of reason, you know there's something evil behind it. But in this last particular issue, it was like, I think he's using Satan as a voice of reason unironically, kind of. It's like it just didn't read well for me at all. So whoever bought that for its cover and then went to, I imagine anyone who buys these for their covers and then goes to read it is going to be nothing but disappointed, because they're so weird.
Did Dave Sim do an obvious joke? For example, toilets. Toilets in hell work, but the toilet paper roll is always folded to the back.
He probably did that at one. There's so many jokes, little jokes like that fly by all the time. But like this one was all about everybody being afraid of Cerebus the lawyer, because he sues everyone in hell for everything and always wins. And everybody's annoyed by him, so they just want him out of there. So it was a lot of lawyer jokes, which some of them weren't particularly interesting, but lots of, like I said, just watching Dave Sim's mind work in this, I find interesting at times. Then other times I'm like, Dave, put that mind to work, will you? Write us something interesting. Like I would imagine if your average, any comic book fan who picked that up would not pick it up a second time. It's really a very specific thing. Much more specific than even Cerebus. You have to want to see Dave Sim, the weirdo religious conservative, making weirdo Cerebus in hell jokes. I mean, that's like a very narrow audience, of which I'm in. What do you got for us there, Chris? Let's see that. Let's get over and give him a
I like that
layout. He's got a Jim Lee Wildcats. Is that a custom one?
It's it's a recreation. This is 11 by 17.
Yep.
It's a commission,
but it's not. I mean, it's not going on. It's not for one of the millions of variant covers they have now.
I don't think
unfortunately, unless you can talk to Marie for me.
I'm not sure if they can reprint the original Wildcat story arc because Youngblood appear.
Well, they're not in the first issue.
Please give us a joke.
They're on the third issue, but they've been very reluctant to reprint anything from the Image era.
Here's a lawyer joke for you. This top one here. So, does he have a case? Then Matt Murdock service. Are you kidding? For the right price, Hitler has a case. Ha 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 ha. Like I said, not very good lawyer jokes that time. And that was one of the running jokes in here was, evil Cerebus lawyer would defend Hitler. So I'm not telling you it's all brilliant. When he goes off the deep end, it's better. Like I wish I could give you an example of him. Real stuff, yeah.
Maybe G could tell us a lawyer joke, an actual one.
But yeah. But like I said, I don't know who is going to be probably no one's collecting both covers. $8 a pop. No one wants two covers of this thing because the print run was no higher than it usually is. Probably 4 people who are like, I need both covers of that. It's like, no way. And saying, if you could talk to Marie James, do you know, I talked to a couple people at Marvel because Edmar, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, commissioned Herb Trimpe to do a new cover for Hulk 181. Which I've made a video about. It's on my channel somewhere from years ago. And I talked to a few people at Marvel who I was like, because that'd be perfect for an alternate cover. Herb Trimpe doing a Hulk 181 reinterpretation. Why wouldn't they want that? Couldn't get anyone interested. I was just like, you people are nuts. It's not my job. I don't care. Whatever. Whoever I talked to, I'm like, well, whose job is it? I don't know. All right, whatever. At least Marie might listen to me.
That reminds me when I did a rush coloring job because all my Marvel coloring jobs were rushed, and I had gotten the pages back, and I happened to have them on me, and I was in an editor's office, and he was like, "Oh, what do you got there?" It's like, "Oh, these are the pages that I had turned in for I think it was the Juggernaut one shot," and the editor's looking through the pages, it's like, these are really good. You should be on a regular book. Really? That sounds great. You're the editor. You're the one that can make that decision. And it's like, well, good to know. Thanks.
Good to know I am skilled.
Whose job?
Once in the end of a trial full of people, the judge said out loud to me, "Counselor, please don't forget to put my daughter's bikini in my mailbox." All the court stood in silence. That's funnier than every lawyer joke in Vark Devil. So. For the right price, even Hitler has a case. Ha, 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 ha. That's a knee slapper. Like I said, the best parts of any Cerebus in Hell where he just goes deep into like where you just get to see deep into the mind of Dave Sim, where he constructs because he's a really good writer, where he constructs the writing in such a way that's interesting. But it's not all of the strips, that's for sure.
I know I bought some books over
my
the
upstairs
years.
neighbors at the time, and the bikini fell into my balcony. Ah, okay. Now it makes. What were you saying, Wilson?
It's like I do recall buying a few issues of Cerebus, but I could not tell you anything about those stories at all. I know I bought some during my time at Marvel. I don't know what was going on that made me buy them, but it was like I probably checked it out after he appeared in Spawn.
Okay.
Just to see more about the character.
That's where everybody first read Cerebus, who wasn't. I actually was pretty late to Cerebus, especially me being an indie guy all through the 80s. I always meant to start reading it, but somehow never did. Then in the 90s, I started buying some of the phone book volumes. And at the end of the 90s, I said, I want to be around for the end of Cerebus. So I put it on my pull list for the last 2 or 3 years. The almost unreadable years of Cerebus.
I think I picked
up all about old Cerebus interpreting scripture.
Church and State was a title that was
that's an earlier one.
I think
those are the ones that people point to as the good ones.
No, I bet Savage Dragon number 300 is going to be a much more interesting read than Cerebus number 300 was.
I wonder how Cerebus would have ended if he didn't find religion. I mean, he always said Cerebus is going to die old, alone, and unloved. So that was always the end of Cerebus. But for the last 2 or 3 years, he had old, alone, and unloved Cerebus interpreting scripture and writing his own Bible. Literally, that was the story. And it was just like, and it had a lot to do with his own finding religion, when he was, in fact, reading all the religious texts and I guess writing his own through Cerebus. I don't know. But it was just so bizarre. I always thought that. I'm like, how would this have ended if he didn't find religion?
What if Dave Sim had decided to become a contestant on Cake Boss? Lots of episodes of Cerebus
making cakes.
Mm-hmm.
What if Dave Sim found baking instead of God?
No, there's a good what if.
We could do a whole bunch of those. What if Dave Sim discovered CrossFit instead of God? He'd be evangelizing CrossFit and be exercising all the time.
Well, exercise freaks are annoying.
So, in other words, there's no way to make the end of Cerebus not annoying.
That's the thing about CrossFit enthusiasts. You can, when compared to Jehovah's Witnesses, you can run away from Jehovah's Witnesses, but not from a CrossFit enthusiast. They will always catch up to you.
Let's see, what else could Dave Sim have found besides religion? What if Dave Sim discovered Mary Kay Cosmetics instead of religion? He'd have Cerebus driving around in a pink Cadillac. So a bunch of late-run Cerebus in the dollar bin yesterday. Left them and picked up Ted McKeever's Pencilhead instead. Pencilhead is good. You should pick up late-run Cerebus just because you probably can't find them. I mean, not a lot of people were buying Cerebus late run. So if you want to read some of them, and those were the days like the letters page was more interesting than the comic. But Pencilhead is fun because that's Ted McKeever was telling stories of his days in comics and naming names. He was, because that was like his last thing. So he didn't even do thinly veiled versions of people. He told you Gil Kane stole artwork.
When did this book come out?
5-6 years ago now, I think. Ted McKeever like retired from comics, I think. Pencilhead was his very last thing he did. Which is funny.
I always found that Ted McKeever is not someone that it's easy to get into.
No. I didn't get into Ted McKeever until about 10 years ago. When he started doing things for Image with Miniature Jesus. There's about three or four series I bought from Image like in the 2010s. That's when, because I'd bought like some Ted McKeever in the 90s and wasn't too into it. I know he'd done some sort of mainstream stuff at DC in the 90s, or maybe it was Vertigo.
He did a Vertigo mini series called The Extremist, written by Peter Milligan.
Okay.
And that's the first time I saw it, and it was like, that's probably the most mainstream thing he did. And I was looking, this is not an easy art style to get into.
Yeah.
And if that's the most mainstream thing he ever did, was hard for me to get into. The rest is just, to me,
well, it was his later stuff that I liked. Miniature Jesus. There's one other. Miniature Jesus was just like about a little crucifix Jesus coming alive in a church in the middle of nowhere. And the fighting. I mean, there was weird stuff going on. I can't even remember the plot now, but it was good and fun. And there was one after that. I can't remember what it was, but I enjoyed that one too. He in the 2010s, he became like one of my regulars. If he was putting something out, I was putting it on my pull list. But like I said, Pencilhead, he couldn't. He's like, I'm retiring from comics. Nobody's buying my stuff, so see you later. And he retired from comics. So just a few years after I really discovered him, I have to say. So try some of his later stuff if you want to, like anything from the 2010s. And like I said, Pencilhead was fun because it was him at his drawing board reminiscing about his days in comics. Chris has got to sharpen that pencil.
Yeah. Sorry.
I think Sim's stuff is here everywhere because he had a good relationship with the store because it's relatively all close to Canada wise. For some reason, Newfoundland has a lot. Okay. Yeah, I imagine he's got that reminds me, Canada. Where is that? I have it bookmarked over here. Cartoonists in the news. Where is it? Seth of Clyde fans and my favorite, It's a Good Life If You Don't Weaken, has been appointed a Chevalier of the Order of Arts and Letters.
Chevalier?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Chevalier. What does that mean?
Knight.
He's a Knight of Canada. And he said, what was his quote here? By the French Minister of Culture. Canadian cartoonist Seth reacted, "Why me of all people?"
That is the most honest opinion any artist ever gave of himself.
So pick yourself up your volume of Clyde Fans by Sir Seth, or Sir Gregory Gallant, as his real name is. Seth is his middle name. He always says, I don't know why I chose to go by just one name. So Sir Gregory Gallant is now...
if you go by just one name, make sure it's something that's easy to remember.
Yeah. Well, Chevalier I forgot what it is already. Of the Order of Arts and Letters. Why me of all people?
Well, good for him.
Yeah.
Get knighted.
I found that neat when and I guess since it's French culture, is it? I wonder how that. I don't know how that works. Is there? Can you be knighted in Canada for English culture? I mean, or is it just everybody is knighted by the French Minister of Culture?
It can be It doesn't need to be knighted in. Well, being Canadian, he can be knighted in England.
Right.
But
I'm
being,
saying,
being a citizen of Canada, he needs to be knighted. In order to be an actual knight, he needs to. I think he needs to be doing something for Canada, because if he does something for England, he gets a sort of title that's
He gets the
reserved for
hose
foreigners.
again.
but
No,
are all Knights of Canada from the French Minister of Culture? I wonder that.
No,
Or
no,
is
no.
there an English Minister of Culture?
No, but the French state can give this type of knighthoods to foreigners.
What's the American version of the word? The freedom? Yeah, I guess it would be the Congressional Medal of Freedom would be the equivalent that they give to artists and whoever they want to, actors, directors. I guess that Chester Brown usually pays for the Chevalier position. I'm not quite sure what that means.
This is probably a lawyer joke.
No, okay. I don't know if it's like paying for a hot star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, because those are actually paid. When you see someone getting a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, that's because somebody paid for them to get a star on that sidewalk. You don't earn it anyway. Somebody pays a certain amount of money. So that's what I was thinking when he put that. It's like, oh, Chester Brown paid for Seth to get one.
Okay, so list of members of the Order of the Arts and Letters in France. Yeah, this seems to be done for foreigners because most of these people are not French. Let's see.
Okay, so this comes from France? It's not French Canadian?
No, it's directly from France.
Okay, all right. I didn't realize it was directly from France.
Okay, so yeah, first name on the list, T.S. Eliot.
Okay.
Okay, so there are French here. There's Marcel Marceau, but next to him, Stevie Wonder.
All right.
Jerry Lewis, Sean Connery, and Audrey Hepburn, and Peter O'Toole. Jorge Luis Borges, Clint Eastwood.
I thought it was French Canadian.
Lauren Bacall, Dustin Hoffman, David Bowie, Salman Rushdie, Václav Havel.
Where's Gregory Gallant on that list?
Leonardo DiCaprio, Meryl Streep, Paul Auster, Ray Bradbury, Emir Kusturica, Roger Moore, Takeshi Kitano, Michael Caine, Christopher Lee.
They're all Knights of France.
Finally, someone from comics, Jean Van Damme.
Mobius?
No, the guy who created Torgal, Largo Ancient 13.
Okay. What's Mobius' name?
Jean Giraud.
Jean Giraud. Okay.
Okay. Bono, Donald Sutherland, Ringo Starr, Bruce Willis, Isabella Gianni, Quincy Jones, Iggy Pop, Vangelis.
Iggy Pop is a Knight of France.
Yeah.
Oh, Vangelis, I can understand. His name's Vangelis, and he makes spacey music.
Roger Corman. Yeah, so... And Alejandro González Iñárritu.
Look at this. My friend Stan Dragland, a local writer, won the award a few years ago. The Medal of Freedom or the Knight of France award?
These are the... Okay, so these are the commanders. There's the commanders, the officers, and the knights. Let's go with... So Seth gets the lowest title. I was reading the highest title.
He's not a commander?
He's not a commander. He's a knight. Okay, so let's see who else is in here. William S. Burroughs.
You don't want to give him too much rank. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I don't know most of these people. David Copperfield.
Any comic book people?
Not yet. Václav Bostek.
Why is Seth big in France? He must be. I mean,
It's probably big with a certain intelligentsia.
Yeah, I imagine. Has to be.
Found a comics person, Jean Robert. He created a kids comic called Boule et Bill.
We're talking about Comic Crack here. We're talking about one of your fellow Canadians who is now a French knight. The one named cartoonist Seth of It's a Good Night, The Good Life If You Don't Weaken, and Clyde fans.
Because there's Philip Glass here.
He was made a member. Oh, his friend was made a member of the Order of Canada. See, now that's different. I thought the knighthood was from Canada, but it's from France. So I guess there's a French knight. Yowza. Yeah, you can see that.
Pierre Michelot. And Goon. Thomas Bangal.
A chevalier of the Order of Arts and Letters.
Yeah, and so
French Minister of Culture.
And so are Daft Punk.
So are Daft Punk.
And they renounced their knighthood.
Wow. Because they're punk, man. They don't want to be knights.
They're not punk. They make electronic music.
Yeah, they got punk in their name. So.
Although one of them, their father created the disco theme, DISCO.
I'm going to pull out another comic I got this week.
Uma Thurman, Jude Law.
Which is 8 Billion Genies, number 2. I wasn't sure if I had ordered this one or not. This is the one I mentioned last week that I had to order number 3 without having read number 2, and I was unsure about it. But now I'm going to get... This is really a kind of writer's exercise comic. Because the theme is all of a sudden... Everybody on Earth gets their own genie and gets to make one wish. So there's 8 billion genies. And the first issue took place in a bar, and the owner of the bar immediately said, I wish that no wishes could affect this bar or anyone in this bar. To give yourself sort of a home base. And it's like everything else is like exploring the crazy thing. What could possibly go wrong giving everybody a wish? And that's what this book is about. What could go wrong? And what you could do to make your wish not go wrong. It's like such a writer's exercise, but it's very imaginative. It's like, it's a bar discussion made into a comic book. What would you do if you had one wish? Oh, yeah? We know what's going to happen if you wish for that.
Free lunch and dinner at Sizzlers for the rest of my life.
I'm going to wish that Sizzlers disappears.
Hey.
Exactly. That's what's happening. There's all sorts of crazy stuff going on. And like it's just such an exercise in writing, kind of like I said. But it's good stuff. It's an 8-issue mini. I got issue 3 coming already, so I'm gonna put the whole thing on my pull list. I enjoy it. The art is kind of the art's a little rough, but the storytelling's good, and it's got sort of this rough style. Let me show you a little. It's got sort of this Paul Popish, just get it done style. It's got some real garish colors. It's decent. Like I said, I'm going to continue getting it, so that's about the best praise I can give it. Some would wish swiftly for the world to explode. You see that? They handled that in here. They had a scene where the president of the United States had one of his generals wish that the United States is the best country, most powerful country in the world from now until the end of time, blah, blah, blah. But it turns out a lot of countries wished that. And the genie just went, we don't grant wishes like that. If your wish is going to do that much damage, we just don't give it to you. But meanwhile, there's giant robots running around fighting each other. Detroit is on fire. There's downtown Detroit.
Did somebody wish Detroit on fire, or is that a natural consequence?
So it's not like, there's a giant monster trying to destroy the bar, which can't be destroyed because so it's like you can do destruction on that type of scale. I'd wish for a bed made of boobs, although on the cold winter nights I might regret it.
Yeah, then the genie understands boobs to mean idiots.
And they talk to you the whole night.
I am curious, is it written where the wish will have that the typical trope of you get what you wish for, but the way you word it is going to be a punishment no matter what?
No.
Okay.
It's not written.
It's not
like
a monkey's paw wish type thing.
No. Matter of fact, some were like, "You better not monkey's paw me. You better not monkey's paw me." And some people like wasted their wishes right away. And so, like one immediately in the first issue, Chris, do you know when the Lobster comic is coming out? What publisher? Tit Goblin wants to know.
It's HarperCollins.
HarperCollins.
From their Harper Alley imprint. It's coming in 2023. I have no idea what month.
He'll let us know. 2023 from HarperCollins. Tariff, you've been dealt with well. We ruined his wish already. But it's like
it's like we're living in the comic.
In the first issue, in this bar was a band. 3 people in this bar. Woman in the band and 2 dudes. Dude number 1 has a crush on the woman. Woman has crush on dude number 2. So they're, doing this. So at one point, dude number 1 is asking out the woman, and she's like, dude number 1, I am not into you. And then this wish thing happens. The woman's like, ooh, I wish dude number 2 were in love with me. And then she goes back into the bar to see if dude number 2 is in love with her. But because of the bar owner's wish, he isn't. And dude number 2 is like, you wished for what? That is freaking creepy. And dude number 1 is like, oh, this issue was like that. He was also like, I don't have a crush on you anymore. That was creepy. So now she's like, I wasted my wish on something stupid. So and then there was like, in this issue, there was a father, because like I said, everybody on Earth gets wishes, including children. So the father's wish was that his children's wishes wouldn't come true unless he approves them. To stop his children from wasting their wishes, because one already did and got lots of candy. So it's a bar conversation exercise in writing. What would you do if you had one wish? Kind of thing. So, and it's like I said, it's well done, very imaginative. Better than I have to say, it's better than your average bar conversation with a drunk about one wish, because they've thought about it and they're imaginative and creative. But a fun one. Mm-hmm. Now, what are you working on tonight, Chris?
Last part. Huh?
What was that?
I'll say that's now reminding you. Just reminded me. I did a strip, a comic strip about G-Man and his brother Great Man at the wishing well. They each got one wish. They each have one magic coin to give them one wish.
Mm-hmm.
And G-Man wishes for a balloon. And then Great Man is so absolutely disgusted with how he wasted the wish. G-Man wishes for the balloon to be popped. Great Man wishes for the balloon to...
Wasting wishes. And is that what you're working on tonight, Chris? That recreation?
Yeah.
Okay. So you haven't done any of those in a while since you've been working on.
Well, 10 years ago,
Yeah.
When Image had their 20th anniversary, I was able to do like officially printed at Image Comics. I did recreations of all the original.
I remember
founders.
buying those. They're in my Chris.
Yeah,
Let me wander over to my Chris Geruso section and see if I can get them.
But because Jim Lee was no longer with the company, Wildcats was the only original #1 Image comic that I didn't actually get to do. So now, because of this commission, I'm able to do it. So 10 years later, completing the circle.
Hold on. Let's
Completing
see.
the list. It's not a circle; it's a list.
Go solo so I can show you Chris Geruso, Elephant Man. Chris Geruso, Youngblood. Chris Geruso, Invincible. Chris Geruso, Bloodstrike. That's the one everyone
Rub the
wants.
blood.
And Chris Geruso, Spawn.
Yeah, I don't like those Bloodstrike and Youngblood covers because you have too much knowledge of anatomy to properly do a love life.
I think people go so overboard to insult Rob Liefeld
Whoops.
Yeah.
that I can't get behind it.
Yeah, it's too easy nowadays.
It's
And
old, you know?
It's absolute hack. And a lot of the times it's not even true. It's like, oh, he never draws feet. Well, yes, he does. Very
does draw
often,
feet.
actually.
In fact,
Yeah,
I do
but-
remember him drawing feet in the New Mutants. Or those shoes were kind of simplistic in design, but there were feet and there were shoes.
Can you actually rub the blood on that version? No, you can't.
No, mine is faked.
I don't mind. I don't mind the Rob Liefeld can't draw feet thing because he earned that, and he earned it by making it obvious that he didn't want to draw feet.
What I'm saying is he draws feet.
I know sometimes I'm talking about there was an issue in it was the Heroes Reborn era. I forget. He was drawing Captain America or the Avengers. I forget which one. I think the Avengers were in it because I remember it taking place in Avengers.
He drew Captain America. Chapier drew the Avengers.
It was him. Those and in Avengers Mansion he had figures, and then he just didn't draw the feet, and he drew like wisps of smoke or grass. And it was like
Now that is
in Avengers
true.
Mansion.
That's true. That's true, but that was a common tactic
I
used
know.
by a lot of artists at the time.
I'm
He
just
gets
saying
singled out because the
he
difference
made
is
it, no. I'm saying he was the one who made it obvious.
he's
And
the
he
one
did it
that's
years
not as
before that,
talented as
too.
the others, and people
It-
want
it
to
is
jump
all-
on him and say he's not good, and so that's their evidence.
I'm saying cartoonists throughout history have not drawn feet because they usually don't fit in the panel. And sometimes you don't want to draw. He was the one who made it obvious. That's how he got that reputation for making it obvious. Everybody else didn't make it obvious. That's how they got away with it.
Look at everybody else drawing comics at that time, and they're all using the same trick.
They learned it from him. That's what I'm saying. He was the first one to make it obvious, and everybody who copied him did the same thing.
Nope.
You know why every barbarian in comics wears modern leather boots?
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to draw toes. And that included John Buscema and Gil Kane.
Yep.
Especially Gil Kane.
No one wants to draw toes. Like most stuff. I mean, Jim Lee does it all the time, where he puts something in the look at half of Jim Lee's covers. He puts something in the foreground so he doesn't have to draw feet. But it's not obvious. It's
At what point do you stop blaming it on the guy doesn't want to draw feet and then recognize the truth behind certain compositions work better if the feet is cropped out or covered up by something else.
I'm not blaming him. I'm saying he deserved his reputation because he made it obvious. Everybody noticed. Nobody noticed before that.
They pick on him because they don't like him as an artist, and they're using that erroneous detail.
Obvious.
No,
he made it obvious.
Nope.
They don't like him as an artist because he made it obvious. That's what I'm saying.
And since I started all this, let me defend Rob Liefeld by saying that he tends to take more shortcuts when he's behind on the deadlines, and those shortcuts are obvious. But if he does work, he's good at coming up with interesting panel composition when he does have time. And I remember his early work on X-Force had some very interesting issues in terms of fight scenes.
I have no problem with Rob Liefeld.
Sounds like you do.
He didn't earn the criticism that is given to him is nuts.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying it goes way overboard.
No right not to like Rob Liefeld's work because he does everything perfectly.
Yeah, that's what I just said.
I'm just saying there are people who don't like his stuff, and they give you the reasons for not liking his stuff. One of the reasons is he made it obvious that he doesn't draw foot. Yes, I know your comic strip. I'm saying people now come to his defense and ignore history.
No, I'm saying you're ignoring. There's so much to legitimately complain about.
Ignoring the history of his work. If you think he didn't make it obvious, if you think criticism of Rob Liefeld is somehow unearned by him,
I'm saying focusing on details.
That's
like
what
that.
People do when they look at comic book art. They focus on details.
I think if you focus on a detail like that, you're deliberately overlooking everyone else who does it, and overlooking the fact that there's other things you could.
That's
more legitimate.
He made it obvious. Everybody did overlook everyone else who did it until he made it obvious, and then everyone copied his style.
I think people just enjoy feeling superior by pointing out something.
That might be true, but he also made it obvious. If the fans can never agree with me about anything, if he doesn't have to.
If it's something that can be recognized by the fans,
yeah, that's how obvious he made it.
Guys, I'll be back. I have to run off for a bit.
Okay.
See, now you made Wilson uncomfortable.
Oh, that's easy.
Here's the thing: as the reader, I am not supposed to notice the tricks that you guys employ when you're drawing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If I notice the tricks, there's something that's not quite gelling.
It's probably not a good trick. If you can tell how the magician is doing his trick,
unless it's something really clever.
Like I said, nobody notices Jim Lee hides feet all the time.
There's not a single foot on this cover.
Exactly. I just saw some recent Jim Lee cover where he was hiding the feet. Nobody cared because he does it well. He knows how to make it not obvious. Most people, the old, well, I think it was his lack of perspective too that made it obvious, because there's the old they're standing on a rock trick, but the rock, they're all perched up on a rock, so the rock.
All right, that's what you should be pointing out. But you're fixating on there's no foot equals bad.
But he couldn't draw the perspective right, so it looked like the people didn't have feet. That's what made it.
What obvious. I'm saying is, talk about the perspective. Like that's the weakness.
Yeah, but the average comic fan doesn't know that. They just know that there's no feet on those. It looks weird because there's no feet on those guys. They don't know that he didn't get the perspective right.
All right, so it's not fair for me to notice that thing then.
No, you can notice it. I'm just saying they don't. All they notice is that there's no feet on it looks weird because there's no feet on these guys.
Yeah, that just tells me everybody wants to see feet.
They don't know the first thing about. They don't know that it looks weird because the perspective is wrong, and that's what makes it look like there's no feet on these guys. If you drew the perspective right, they wouldn't notice. Alas, footwear always was less cooler part of any superhero out. Matter of fact, I just saw I may have been Eric Larson. Just posted something where this is the reason comic books take so much longer to draw. And he
was
posted,
that the 70s Captain America boot versus the
right.
current?
And it was a John Buscema boot, one of those Buccaneer boots, compared to a boot. I don't know, was from the Ultimates where they drew every eyelet,
all the laces, every rivet. Yeah.
You know where I first saw that too? Was this every day in the bullpen? Most days. Except there were 20 of us doing this.
Isn't talking shit about fellow creatures.
On rare occasion, I'll chime in and say one thing, and then Jared goes, "Oh, Chris can't agree with anything I say," but you don't notice the 100 things that I don't respond to at all.
Yeah, you just sit there, you're fighting the wars over there. I know. Was it who's the guy who drew Cage back in the early 90s? Dwayne
McDuffie was the writer.
Oh, I can't remember.
Cage wasn't published here, and I never paid much attention to that run.
I can't remember who drew Cage. He was good, but he drew Cage in like work boots and drew.
Was it Dwayne Turner?
Maybe Dwayne Turner. I think it was. But he drew
that back when Timberlands were in fashion.
Yes. Back when Timberlands were in fashion, and he drew like all the laces. He drew the entire sole of the shoe. You could see every, little crevice in there.
Because it was the urban comic. Cage was supposed to be wearing something that looked black, so he was wearing streetwear.
Right.
And that included the boots.
And that was the first. That was the first time I noticed an artist just going crazy on those boots. That might be the first time boots changed to everyone having to wear combat boots that laced up halfway to the shin.
There may be a few Punishers here and there where he's using different.
Yeah, Punisher probably. Boots. But I just don't remember. That's the first place that I remember that level of detail on. I was like I said, he drew nobody drew treads on boots.
Mm-hmm.
There was always a flat bottom, cowboy boot bottom. He drew every single piece of the tread. And now we've got the book that's named for Chris. A Righteous Thirst for Vengeance.
Yeah.
And I don't know what's up with this issue. I don't know if it's a dream sequence, because last issue was the all torture issue. This issue is the all vacation issue. So last we saw our lead character here, that's not even him, this guy down here, who was trying to help out some people who were being stalked by an assassin, broke in on the assassin killing people, and the little boy he was trying to protect too, we didn't know if he was alive or dead. I thought he was dead because he looked like he made him drink. This assassin makes his victims drink Drano. It's really weird and torturous. And it looked like that's what happened to the kid. But this issue takes place in Puerto Penasco, Mexico. P-E-N with a accent over it, A-S-C-O. And it's like they're on vacation. We get he's driving around the town, checking things out. Then we get a 1, 2, 3. This artist is so good. 5-page sequence on how to make shrimp tacos. The artist is, what's his name again? Andre Lima Araujo. And it's just, they're on vacation. They're in Mexico at a resort. have it, and it's like this whole issue was just kind of like a respite from everything that's been going on. But I don't know that the kid's still alive. Well, let's the kids. How did they leave? They didn't give it. It just skipped. I think. Matter of fact, I saw someone. Someone on Twitter commented on Sleepy Reader's Twitter feed that it seemed like he skipped an issue when he read this one. And I know what he means, because it's like, and I'm like, I don't think this is a dream sequence. I think it's real, but I didn't even know the kid was still alive. And then the only cliffhanger at the end is this guy, the lead character, his mother, who he thought was dead, shows up. He thought someone killed his mother or something. She shows up at the end, and you're like, okay, that's not dangerous. His mother shows up. So it was really weird, really well done, though. This guy's visual storytelling is just, it was like a vacation issue, and the visual storytelling of the vacation was just wonderful. And there are feet on the cover. Look right there, Chris. There's some feet for you.
Thank God.
Oh, look at this. This is the feet page. He's got two people running with their feet up. And then they're swimming. We got wet feet and sandy feet on this page.
You get your money's worth. You get your money's worth.
Oh, yeah.
Feet and toes.
But it's the... I have to show you these pages. But it's the how to make shrimp tacos pages. That you don't get in your average comic.
Mm.
Right after the old torture issue, that was really weird. Chris, have any more observations for us?
I don't see why I should ever say anything again.
Oh, what? I think you can say whatever you want, and you will. You like defending your buddy, Rob, because you go out to lunch with him, and he gives you presents.
He was actually just in town here.
Yeah.
2 weekends ago.
Do you know him at all?
I've met him a couple times and had dinner with him twice in such a large group that I didn't get to hear anything he was saying. Yeah. And then after the dinner, I got to hear all the stories about all the crazy stories that he was telling them that I missed out on.
You got all the secondhand stories?
Yeah.
You missed out on this.
He does like to tell his version of everything on his podcast.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll say this. I'll say this for the guy. He paid for dinner. For all of us. Giant group of 20 guys, he paid.
He can buy your loyalty. We know that. Uh-oh.
Yeah, because if he hadn't paid for that dinner, I'd be sitting here angry about feet.
I know you would be. You'd be here going, feet, feet, feet. Actually, like I said, I don't care about Rob's reputation for not drawing feet at all.
Yeah, obviously you don't.
I just think he earned it, so it's okay with me. And he jokes about it. And he shows you drawings he did do of feet. I actually follow Rob on Twitter. He's a good Twitterer. He's got a much better... I follow Rob, too, to see his observations.
Okay, we get it. We get it. You're his best friend.
I am. He sends me a Christmas card every year. Tells me he loves me. What did you just do? You made yourself go sideways. Hey, Chris. Can he hear us?
I think the image froze.
The image froze. He's sideways.
But we can hear him draw. Chris, we can hear you draw. So
say something, Chris. Are you still here with us? I don't think he's here. I think he's gone. Hello. You're making Paolo fall asleep. All right. Well, the next comic I got was Monstrous. Man, this is up to issue 41.
Damn. Oh, that's long running by modern standards.
I know. That's kind of crazy. The story keeps going. It's been very action-oriented recently. Lots of good art. And they're actually taking a break after this until December and doing a new comic. Who is this? Marjorie Liu and Sana Takeda. Monstrous will return this winter. Apologies for the cliffhanger. But in the meantime, we hope you check out another series that Sana and I created, which will be released in October. It's called The Night Eaters. It's set in a world much like our own, but with a small deadly twist. Whatever that might be. But I'm looking forward to that series, and I'll continue with Monstrous. And there's actually a 2-issue miniseries that goes with this too. So it's like 43 issues. You turned sideways and disappeared.
My phone ran out of juice.
Ah. Juiceless.
My phone apparently can't handle it when you attack Rob Liefeld. Or no, you were his best friend, I think.
I was at dinner with him, having a good time.
Now I'm on my iPad and I have nowhere to put it.
You don't have one of those iPad stands?
This is why computers are the best for streaming.
Yeah.
There.
But he's working on his computer, right? Well, he will not tonight, but he has been.
Yeah, for
his coloring.
Yeah, coloring I was on my computer and I had this thing. But right now everything is a mess in here. It's too cluttered for me to put my iPad where I usually do.
When you do your coloring, have you ever used any of those Photoshop brushes that you can download or buy?
No, but I'm not doing anything fancy.
I'm just trying them recently, and they're pretty interesting. I was trying some for Procreate too, because you can color now in CMYK in Procreate.
Yeah. Have you figured out how to select off certain areas?
Yeah, there's a selection tool in it that I'm not as good at it with. I'm not as you can do 2 things when you select in Procreate. You can set up a reference. You know how when you use the magic wand, you can tell it to select all layers?
Yeah. No, I didn't know you could do that.
Oh, yeah, you can. That way, if you want to, you can work. If you're working with the magic wand, you can have your color layer underneath and your black layer on top, and it'll use the black layer to stop the magic wand.
Okay.
If you there's a little box up top that says select all layers when you can do the same thing in Procreate. You can set up a reference layer. So if you make your black plate your reference layer, you can just click and fill in any of the areas of your black plate. So like if it's completely enclosed and you want to put red in there, you just tap and red will go in there and it'll stop at the edge of the black plate, even though that's on a separate layer. You're coloring underneath it.
Do you have is there like a selection tool?
Yes, there's also a selection tool where you can freehand a selection, where you can use a magic wand, or you can make a shape.
In Procreate?
In Procreate, yeah.
Because I mean, I can do things where I can select things to move them around. Is that the same thing?
Yeah, same selection tool.
Okay, so let's say I make this giant area, and then I want to get rid of the white.
Right.
How do you do that?
You can just use it's called automatic selection. It's just like the magic wand. You tap in the white. Or else you can set it up also. It's got all the layer styles like Photoshop has. So you set your black line to multiply. And you put your color line underneath, your color underneath, and you set up your black line as the reference layer. And it now uses that for whenever you use the paint bucket or whatever it is that is.
All right. I'll mess around with it. And then I'll come back with questions because I won't be able to make any of it work. I guarantee you.
There's tons of videos on it too out there. If you ever want to know how to do anything in Procreate, someone's made
I hate
a video.
the videos because it's always like I have like one very specific thing I want to do, and then the video is like 90 minutes long. And I'm like, when are you going to get to the part I need?
I may need to change studios. I was thinking about a co-op. Chris, do you like your shared space?
I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love the shared space. If you can afford it, that's the thing, is it's like a little bit of an extra expense, but if you're not in New York City or California or somewhere super expensive, then
right.
It's pretty nice. Because then like the whole studio becomes, I don't know, it's like I don't want my bedroom filled with action figures, but I do want my studio filled with action figures.
Mm-hmm. And it can become a hangout too if you needed to.
Yeah. Also that, like if you can go in on a place and then you can hang out with your buddies and stuff, and
right.
You always have somebody to. Can you look at this for me? What am I doing wrong? What do you think of this idea?
Yeah.
It's a double-edged sword though, because then it can become like, hey, you want to watch the next thing? Have you watched it yet? Yes, I have. Well, I'm going to watch it now. I guess I'll watch it again.
Movie time can really extend.
Yeah.
Let's see, what other comics do I have here? Oh, I wanted to speaking of Photoshop brushes, I have no idea. This is the Department of Truth comic, which is the one that's about conspiracies. But I have no idea if this guy does this traditionally or in Photoshop or Procreate, but he uses all these textures and things. And that's one thing I was messing with because it's so easy to use textures and stuff and sort of messy color with these Photoshop brushes and things like that right there. I have no idea if this is traditional or digital. And one of the reasons I don't is one of the tail, he's working dark over light, which usually is a tale of traditional, meaning that if you're doing something with transparent color, you got to put the light color down first and the dark color over top of it, because you can't put light over dark. You can't put yellow over black. It'll just be black when you're
unless you start using paint.
Right, or paint. Unless it's some kind of opaque paint, you can't do that. But in digital, you can. So you can often tell if someone's painting digitally by their light color.
Miles Morales' costume was definitely designed in the digital age.
Yeah. If the light colors
Yeah.
really are like completely opaque over the black, because it's digital. There's no black behind it. It's completely white. But in this, it looks like I don't see any light over dark. It's all dark over light. So it makes me think this is all watercolor with he's actually, well, he could be throwing. So like I said, it makes me think it's traditional, but I still could be wrong.
Well, you can just as easily do traditional techniques on a computer as
you could work dark over light digitally, and no one ever know.
Yeah.
But almost no one does because it's so easy to throw some light stuff. It doesn't matter. So I don't know. So it's like, I think this is traditional, but I can't swear to it. I don't know. Because there's so much texture on it and so many like little effects and stuff and little shimmers and he moved the image, or he moved he duplicated the image and moved it 1/8 of an inch this way. So that it could be all digital. So but it's a good, and he changes a lot of styles. But like I've just been messing with learning new digital techniques, and this is a book that really I was looking at going, wow, he really makes his textures sing, because there's not always a lot of drawing in something like this in terms of little noodly details. It's just sort of mixed textures and mixed colors and effects and brush strokes. And I really like it. But it's like such a different way. It's like, this eagle's wing here isn't individually delineating feathers kind of thing, but it's like using little brush strokes and textures to create feathers. So I find that
Bob Ross.
Bob Ross, there you go. Double load your brush. It's sort of like Bob Ross taken to the extreme, but yeah, it's it's doing stuff like that. So this has been good. And he's changed up styles a few times depending on the story. What was interesting about this?
How often does that book come out?
We're on issue 19. It probably comes out 8 or 10 books a year, maybe. It's been out what? Somewhere, yeah. A lot of these like indie books, they come out monthly for a while and then take a hiatus.
Well, I'd say based on the speed, then it's probably, I would guess digital, just because digital is so much faster.
But it's like Matt Kint. His watercolor style was actually watercolor, and I thought that was digital. I don't know if you've ever seen Matt Kint's, because he's a writer and an artist, but he's got he and Jeff. Do you know Jeff Lemire?
Is that Sweet Tooth?
Yes.
Is that him?
Yes, he's got a style similar to that. And he did this book called Mind Management. And one of the interesting things was I was trying to figure out if he was doing real watercolor or not real watercolor. But he printed Mind Management with all the blue lines on it. Like you could see that it was done on comic book paper.
Uh-huh.
It had, copy safe area. He printed the art with that right on it. So I was like, this must be real watercolor.
Unless that's the whole game, is like, watch me trick these guys. I have a scan.
No,
blue line.
What he did? He did it in real watercolor and then put the blue lines in digitally.
That's what I'm saying. Okay.
I was like, that's nuts. That's absolutely nuts.
It's super fake out.
Yeah, super fake out. But
to what end?
I don't know.
By that, yeah.
I don't know, but I just found that so funny when I finally found that. When I saw, matter of fact, he was at a con I was at. I saw him briefly. I didn't get to talk to him, but he had his original art there, and I saw him. I think I saw a picture of him painting his original art, and it was actually on watercolor paper rather than comic book paper. And I was like, "What kind of nut puts the blue?"
I wonder if he pasted it on so that he could make sure the proportions are all like the panel, the placement, right? And then maybe forgot.
No, not the whole book. All 26 issues. It was a good comic too. One of my favorite. My favorite Matt Kint work. Well, I like most.
That has to have been addressed somewhere. Somebody must have asked him.
Yeah, I was like, I wonder why he chose that.
Somebody knows the answer to this.
He does, I'm sure, but I don't know him. If it was Rob Liefeld, I could just go out to dinner and ask him.
Exactly.
I had to stop reading the blue line in mine because it was so hard on the eyes. All the little bits on the side had hints and stuff. Well, until I stopped. Yeah, he also did something where in the margins he would run little stories and there'd be sentences in the margins that sort of added to the world but weren't really part of the panel-to-panel story.
Uh-huh.
So you could read what I ended up doing was I'd read the panel-to-panel story, and then I'd go back and read the story that was in just the little sentences in among the blue lines.
Right.
So that was a weird thing he did in that. Then we were told that those sentences weren't going to be in the collected edition, but I think they were. Because he did some stuff where, since he wanted you to buy the comic, he put some extra comics on like cover 2 and cover 3, just one page, to give you a little taste of the mind management world thing. Then I think those those little strips of type. I read at the beginning that those also weren't supposed to be in the trade, but then when the trade came out, they were. I'm like, okay, I guess maybe I misread that or something. But they really just kind of add to the world of mind management. They don't affect the story as it's going on. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's difficult these days to tell if something. A lot of times, if something is digital or traditional.
There's this guy in Spain that I always that I always keep bringing up, Vicente Segredes. He did oil. He used to paint his comics in oil paintings. The mercenary, and as he got older and he got to his late 60s, he started doing everything digitally, even in the late 90s. And they still look like oil paintings, but they are completely digital.
Wow. Yeah, but Brian Boland's been completely digital since the end of the 90s. All those nice Brian Boland pieces have no original art to them.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're probably very, very, very good at telling how to do reproducing certain details.
Yeah.
In Segredes' case, he interned at a truck plant as doing industrial design before he started doing commercial art. So maybe the industrial design kind of helps him focus on this type of details.
I actually just heard an interesting. There's a place in New York City called the Society of Illustrators. It's been around for 100 years. There was back in the early 20th century when illustrators were rock stars. They started a little club in Manhattan. They own the building. It's still around, the Society of Illustrators. My friend Ed Murr has been a member for 20 years or so. But they also put on shows. Matter of fact, that's where Flo Steinberg's memorial was at the Society of Illustrators. It's up in the East 50s or something. I can't remember. But then you can also follow the Society of Illustrators on Instagram. I think it was at the beginning of COVID. They had some people doing live demos of illustrations. And I was watching one of them who, I can't remember what the guy's name was. He was a friend of my friend Ed's. But he had an interesting thing to say about oil paint that I never thought of before. Because different mediums do different things. Like if you're using a water-based medium, usually the paint dries lighter than when you put it down. So if you're using watercolor, you got to count on that paint. When it's done drying, the water's gone from it, the color's going to be a little bit lighter. Same with acrylics. Same with and there's other mediums that dry a little bit darker. And the guy was like, I love oil paint. It dries the exact same color it comes out of the tube. I was like, wow, I've used lots of oil paint, but I never thought of that before. I don't know why. Dries the exact same color it comes out of the tube. Mostly acrylic does too if you're using it thick, but if you're using it thin, it gets lighter. So follow the Society of Illustrators. Learn some stuff.
Is that what Brian Boland uses? Because
Brian Boland is all digital.
Yeah, but before that.
Oh, I don't know.
Because his stuff had a metallic sheen to it, but it was not.
I always think of pen and ink when I think of Brian Boland.
Really?
What stuff?
Well, I was going
to think of his stuff in color. I'm thinking Judge Dredd, which is black and white, and that was all.
Probably the original printings, the Killing Joke.
The Killing Joke,
or the Camelot 3000 covers.
I don't remember them being painted at all. I'm gonna have to go back in a little bit. They may have been blue line colored, which I don't think he cut. Blue line is what they used to do when they'd shoot right from a painting with the black ink over it. So what you do, you would get the colorist / painter would get an acetate print with the black line on it. And acetate is clear, so everywhere that is white is clear. And he'd tape it to a piece. It would be taped to a piece of watercolor paper or something, and then they would paint underneath the black line, and then fold the black line down to make sure that the painting worked. So it would be black line over a painting kind of thing. And they may have been that. I don't know if he did them himself, but that's probably
because it didn't look traditional. It's never looked traditional to me.
Right. It may have been blue line painting. Like I said, yeah. So what they do is they lift the black line. They take a photograph of the painting right underneath, and then just drop the black line on top of it.
Because his covers for the Invisibles, they definitely were digital. But this stuff from the 80s,
that could have been blue line painting. I haven't looked at it in so long. I don't know. I'd have to look.
Yeah, and it's kind of tough to find the original an image of the original colors for the Killing Joke, because on the reprints they recolored everything.
Yeah.
I gotta go.
Was that?
I gotta go.
You gotta go.
Yep.
All righty. He said he'd be here till 7:30.
Yeah, it's good to check in.
All righty.
Probably be back next week.
All right. You have a good night.
Maybe Tuesday. Huh?
Well, I said, have a good night. We'll catch you then.
All right.
Later, Chris.
Not everybody.
Good night.
So I bought a comic.
You bought a comic? What did you get?
Amazing. Don Vega by Pierre Alari. Actually, let me put this thing back on the stool so I can get it up. After a few hours to get comfortable, I just stretch my legs and always put the laptop on my legs. But okay, this is a French, this is a European size comic, so
go solo. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so Don Vega by Pierre Alari, and it's a Zorro adaptation. I thought it was going to be a direct adaptation of The Curse of Capistrano because there have been so many literary adaptations in France. But this doesn't follow any particular. It's not a direct adaptation. It doesn't follow any particular continuity, and it's very based on the movie that starred Antonio Banderas.
Okay. And how old is Zorro? Is it in the public domain?
It is in the public domain. The Curse of Capistrano was published in the U.S. in 1919.
Okay.
But the art style, it does not look like anything that you expect from Zorro.
Oh yeah.
This guy used to work for the Disney Studios. He animated. What is it that he animated? Something from. I don't know the Disney. I never remember the Disney movies because I don't like watching Disney movies. So.
Oh, okay.
But he worked for the Disney Studios. So there's a Tarzan. He animated the Disney Tarzan movie. So yeah, there's kind of that, but there's also a lot of anime influence. Did you ever notice on anime that characters with full beards never open their mouths when talking?
No, I've not watched enough animation to notice that.
But I kind of noticed that when especially in more kid-friendly cartoons. You have a full beard, and you kind of see the beard moving, but the mouth never opens. So it's kind of the same thing here. But not that this is Kitty, because
let's see it again.
You see, here's the guy getting his face pierced by a sword.
Ah, okay.
So it's definitely violent, but there's a lot of talking. The action is interspersed, and I read this, and then I kind of looked for some extra info on it, and I found Augie de Bleek's review of the comic because it's been published in the U.S. by Europe Comics. So you should be, if anyone's interested, you should be able to buy it. And you kind of notice that there's very little action on a Zorro comic.
Uh-huh.
There's
more intrigue than action.
Yeah, because people talking, people drinking coffee, people smoking.
Have you ever seen the Alex Toth Zorro comic?
Yeah, when I was very, very young.
It
also
looks beautiful. The
know,
story isn't all that, but holy cow, is it beautiful.
Yeah, also the French-made stories, they're kind of in the same vein.
Yeah.
But this one is not. There's, I mean, like this panel here, it's set in the mine, in the gold mines, and it's very, very detailed. Even with the characters being very small with all the backgrounds around. But it's not what you're expecting.
No.
So I kind of agree with that Augie had some problems that he pointed out in his review, because they're not really problems, but they're kind of are. the expectation. You also found something to complain about on the lettering, and here's something funny, because I don't know if Gus is still around, but I was supposed to be on the show, on the Portuguese language show on Tuesday, and I wasn't because I had a family thing. But we had invited a friend of mine to be there. He's the biggest comic book influencer in Portugal. He has a website called Central Comics, and he also has his own YouTube channel.
He's here.
Yeah, and and he said, when you're reading a comic and you say I kind of like the art, but there's something in it that doesn't quite gel. They're usually talking about the lettering. And Augie complained about the lettering in the US edition.
Okay. Here, that brings us back to the Department of Truth too. One of the things I like about it was they do these because I've noticed this is a problem in some comics. They have to when you've got comics that are just this sort of there's no line in them. It's all sorts of textures and things. So using a traditional sort of oval balloon sometimes stands out. So they're using these sort of angular, every balloon is different. There's little bits that stick out. And I think those solutions work for me a lot of the times. Like I've seen comics with art like this, and they have like perfectly round balloons.
Right.
But
there's no way to make lettering look natural in a painted comic.
Right. So they do a good job with this by making the balloons look natural. They blend in matter of fact, now that I'm looking at it here, they're making a shape with the white part of the balloon, and then they're putting an outline around it that's not quite on the white part, so it's a little off. So I think that's a good. I think changing the balloons around works best for me, because I've seen some painted comics where they make the balloons a little transparent to try and get it to blend in with the artwork, and that just is like, ooh.
Yeah, that doesn't look professional. Yeah, I don't think it looks professional.
No, clever ballooning. Like I said, the letterer really matters. And who's the letterer on this? Let's give him some credit. The letterer is Aditya, Aditya Bidikar, Bidikar. I think, like I said, it does a nice job with the lettering. It fits in with the artwork.
Yeah, that's an Indian name, but he may be American.
Yeah. You never know. Like I said, there's so much foreign talent in American comics right now, but there's also so many Americans with names from all around the world. So it's like, let's see what Tit Goblin has. I like Jim Mahfood's new series because he's using hand-cut Zipatone in mixed medium. I'm fine with digital, but I like when it's actual original art. Yeah.
Oh, there's one thing Augie said about the Zorro story that I hadn't noticed, but he did because I think he was reading the digital version. this shading.
Let me bring you up.
Let's see if I can show this. Okay, so you see the shading.
Mm-hmm.
It's not digital effects. It's not coloring. If I can show this, you may not be able to show, but this is Zipatone.
Uh-huh. But nowadays you can draw with digital Zipatone.
Yeah, but the thing is, he kind of complained here about all the time it took to do him all the tricks. I think he did, even though he's an animator, I think he wanted to do everything on paper.
He did actual Zipatone?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it took him over 2 years to finish this, and it's 90 pages. And he wrote, drew, and colored everything.
Wow. You know what I've seen some guys doing now too, digital guys, is that like who was doing it? There was some Bad Idea stuff where the artist / penciler inker, it's usually the same guy, tones all his work too.
Mm-hmm.
So he puts shading in digitally, I think it is. So I think Juan Jose Rip was doing that, where it's not just black and white. He shades the whole thing with gray. Then it goes off to the colorist, and the colorist colors over shading that's already there.
Mm.
Is that guy lighting the pipe with a Bic lighter? Which book was that, his or mine?
This actually, look, I don't think he has a. Well, I really can't tell. Oh, or this.
Well, you can turn Bic lighters all the way up so that.
No, maybe I think it's a match.
Ah.
Because this is set in the 1850s, so they didn't have lighters.
Ah.
But I think Pierre Paladin knows this.
A Bic lighter isn't cinematic enough. If you're in the movies and you got to light something on fire, you need a Zippo. Because you can't toss a Bic lighter casually and start an inferno. It's like everybody in the movies is like, can't do that with a Bic. Has to be a Zippo. Let's see. Another comic I got this week is issue 3? Issue 3 of Image 30th anniversary anthology. And this is Rumble. I bought the first series of Rumble. I forget who the artist was. John Arcudi writes it. And I forget who the artist was for the first series, but I liked it. Then the new artist took over, and I didn't buy like the second series. But James Harron is drawing this one, and it's nice. I can't remember if he was the first artist or not, but he's good. And I haven't read a Rumble story in years now. But this is a good. Rumble's just some ancient mythical monster, what's his name, Rakren, something like that. The big sword who was fighting people in modern day, and he had some sidekicks and stuff. Other than that, I can't. We get every issue we get a 2-page joke from Scotty Young. Every issue we get the last page as Dean Haspiel, and is this the Red Hook? Billy Dogma, pardon me, not the Red Hook. This character, Billy Dogma, who likes to contemplate things and spout philosophy as he works. I rewinded that, man. That's a Bic lighter in the 19th century.
It isn't a Bic lighter. You can't tell. It's too small. I think it's a match. I think it's a match, but it's too small. But it's not a lighter.
People that do digital, because the secondary income of art sales from traditional isn't there. Is there a way to sell a print that's thought of in the collector's realm as a good? Marvel started a program years ago. I don't know if it's still around, for colorists to sell original art, where it was through some official channels where there'd be one full color printout of each page, and the colorist could sell it as original art. I don't know whatever happened to that. Nah, he would hold the match very differently.
Woody.
So, what I think, the reason I think digital artists do it digitally is it's faster, and that's how they do it. I'm a pipe dude. Oh, he knows. Like I remember Eric Larson saying it a couple of times that he's never going to do it digitally because part of his income is selling original art. He wants to do that. But I know I can remember when, what's her name? God, not Amy Racecar. And I've heard, I cannot remember her name, but she was a hot artist about 10 years ago. She's still around. She worked for Marvel and did some indie stuff. Amy Reeder, that's her name. And back when Tumblr was a thing, I used to follow her Tumblr blog. And at one point, and this was, she's already a professional artist working on her own comic and working for Marvel or DC or whoever. And she did it all digitally. And she's like, I want to learn to draw with a pencil because she didn't know how. She grew up drawing digitally, like a lot of people have these days. So she, and I've heard this from, there are people who like, comic book artists, younger ones, who are at conventions and they couldn't draw at conventions because they do everything digitally. And that's specifically why she was learning to draw with a pencil so she could draw at conventions and make things because she never did. I'm like, wow, I remember reading that for the first time going, yeah, well, it makes sense if they hand you an iPad when you're 12 and you learn to draw on it, when you're 22, you might not know how to use a pencil. And that was the case with more than one comic book person.
So I don't think there's room here for a lighter.
Let's see. There could be, but that's not how you use that's how you hold a lighter. That is definitely how you hold a lighter, and that is how you hold a Bic lighter. That's not how you hold a match.
But there's no room here, and the lighter would have to be visible.
No. The lighter, what it is in order. Yeah, like I agree with him. Let's just say, here I got a Zippo right here. It's not a Zippo lighter. Because a Zippo lighter, out of fluid, you would see a Zippo lighter, the lid would be up. But a Bic lighter, you light like this, and you'd have to turn the flame on. The flame would come out there, and then you'd bring it over to your pipe, and you'd turn it like that and suck it. So the air would go into the pipe. So you'd hold a Bic lighter like that. So I think that's now a match. You'd hold like where's a little? I don't have a little match. Here we go. A match you would light, and you would hold like this. So the hand. So I think he is right. That is a Bic because you'd hold the Bic light. You hold the Bic lighter like this. You'd hold the match like this.
Because he's holding a. Maybe there's a problem because he doesn't. Probably not being a smoker, people not smoking as much nowadays. He doesn't know people light because he's holding a match here.
Hold on, solo layout.
See, he's holding a match.
Oh yeah, that is definitely a match. See, his hand position is complete. He used two different reference sources.
Mm-hmm.
He had one reference source of lighting a pipe, and it was with a lighter.
Mm.
And he had another reference source of lighting a pipe, and it was with him. Notice how the lighter is like this, the match is like this. So his hand.
But he's not holding the lighter with his fingers. He's not holding the match with his fingers. He's holding the match between his fingers.
Right.
I think he does not know how people light cigarettes with matches.
He did not get the hand gesture right. I've seen people light pipes with matches on Sherlock Holmes, the 80s one. And often like the flame is all the way in the middle of the match, and they're still, sucking away on it. So. Know who wouldn't have gotten that wrong? Probably Andre Araujo would have had 3 pages on lighting the lighter.
Yeah, I think he knows how people like but there's some. People don't smoke in public so much nowadays.
Yeah,
there might be a case where people grow up not knowing how to properly light a cigarette or a cigar.
draw someone doing it.
Yeah,
because they never see it, and they didn't think of it. Do you think someone grows up learning digital would find learning mark making with a pencil after the fact quicker than digital? No, because an instant mark. The huge advantage to digital is how easy it is to make your mistakes go away. I can imagine. I can't wrap my head around knowing digital before traditional. Me too. Blows my mind. What's so easy about digital is your mistakes are meaningless. It's on another layer. It can be Command Z'd. You don't like it. It's not like when you're, have you ever seen just, people get, when you do a whole drawing and then mess it up and you messed it up 3 steps back, you have to erase the whole thing and start over. You don't have to do that with digital. You can hit Command Z to get back where you were and everything's fine. You can, like I said, it's just it's not that the learning curve is different. It's that the dealing with your mistakes curve is different. In digital, the dealing with your mistakes curve is a lot easier. So I imagine that's why people are, that's why everybody's attracted to it. Kind of, it's like, it's tougher to mess things, when you mess things up, it's easier to fix. Like I said, so I imagine someone going from digital to physical is like, oh my goodness, where's my Command Z? I want Command Z. Make this go away. I can't.
There's no Command Z in real life.
No, I want that. Ooh, that could be one of the wishes in 8 Billion Genies.
Get a Command Z for real life.
Yeah. I don't know how that would work, but
Undo.
That was someone's power in some book or something I was reading. They could see 7 seconds ahead in the future. I don't know if that's a Command Z, but there was something weird. I remember that power. I don't know where I remember it from.
Jared's gone. Well, we have the tradition of Jared getting kicked off his own stream.
Kicked me out again when I go over to highlight a I don't know what that is. I like the craft of making things and buying art supplies. I would hate me too. I like making things. That's part of my now that asshole's gone. But I don't know what it is. It always, if it's gonna kick me off, it kicks me off when I put my cursor over the comments. Like, I don't click, I don't do anything. 99 times out of 100, I put my cursor over the comments and it does nothing. That one time, it kicks me out.
The goggles, they do nothing.
The goggles, they do nothing. Yeah, I love art supplies. I love making things. I love learning new art supplies. But I have to tell you, I've been having fun learning Procreate and Photoshop brushes recently, and just sort of flinging color around with them digitally. I've never, like I said, lots of comic colorists do that. I've never quite done that before because I've mostly been doing it physically. But it's interesting because one of the things I never liked about comic book coloring, which is really 90s comic book coloring, when I first learned it, is back when everything was round and everything was dark to light with highlights on it. Everything was, shading that was digital shade. And when we look back on the 90s digital coloring and go, ooh, that's what I was doing too. And I never liked it because that's what we were limited to. We didn't have all these natural brush tools that we have now, where you can just watercolor only with a Wacom tablet or Procreate and iPad. And it works completely differently. And I've been doing these new things because I have to change my whole thing, because I'm always like, dark to light, gradient tool, dark to light. Oh, let's put our dark here or medium tone, and it's just, I just find that so boring. Not to mention it's 20 years ago. 20 years ago. Can't color like it's 20 years ago. Got to learn some new things. Let's see. One last comic for the week. It's the new issue of What's the Furthest Place from Here.
A very visible title.
Yeah, you can barely see that one. And this is, I've been enjoying this series thoroughly. And what I like about, they're good at giving you the single issue experience. Because each issue is $4 and it's 40 pages, even though some of them are these big black chapter headings. But I don't mind them when it's a 40-page thing. They would. No, it's a 24-page thing or a 32-page thing, and they give you those big headings. It's like, oh, come on. But this is the one that takes place in a world where there are no grown-ups. Titles are getting long. Yup. Which one which was the first long title that get popular?
You only find them when you're dead?
No, before that was, what was that horror one? All of a sudden I can't remember the name too. From Boom. Is that the first one?
Something's Killing the Children?
Something's Killing the Children. I don't know if that was the first one, but it may have popularized it. But this one is actually a flashback. It still doesn't give us Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Well, then there was the 80s black and white boom. All those names.
Suburban Ninja She-Devils.
Radioactive adolescent black belt hamsters. And all those names. There was lots of them. But this one, it's a flashback that gives a look at the old world, but it really doesn't answer any questions. It starts out with, it just says a long time ago. And we have a father running with his children out of the city, futuristic city. And he's like, everybody's dead. We have to leave. And they're like, why? And the kids are like, why do we have to leave? He's like, there's no home for us anymore here. Everything's wrong. And there's this woman who's like, please take my baby with you. So I guess something's going to happen in this city. They don't tell us, where everybody's going to die. And there's a barricade around the city with armed guards, and he rams his car through it to escape. And then he finds the children, he drives till he runs out of gas with his kids. And he's like, all right, we have to get off the road. There's these, I don't know, rampaging people on the roads. He's like, we got to hide from them. And then we get a look at these people who, there are these big, tall people in robes with hoods over their heads who we've seen before in this series. They just call them the Strangers. But we don't know who they are. And in this, they take the kids. They're taking the kids and killing the adults. So they got all the kids on a bus, hence the bus and the title, and they're taking them to some place. And then all of a sudden, the kids are living alone. The kids are living. One of them's living, and we get. It's kind of like the movie, The Warriors, where they had all those ridiculous gangs, the baseball furies and the Lizzies and the and whatever. That's how these kids are living. One of the kids are living in a Sweeney's Sweets, so they all dressed like they're working in a candy store, and the other kids are living in a movie theater, so they all dress like ushers, and there's always so now the kids are just on their own, and these are like completely different kids too, I think, living in these houses, and like I said, it's just kind of a flashback to show you how it all started, but it explains nothing. So it's good. It just doesn't explain anything. You're expecting it to explain, but I've really enjoyed this series. They've made each issue. It's definitely not written for the trade. They've made each issue kind of a fun experience, which I'm sure you can read it in the trade and have a good time with it too. But it's good stuff. You're also not allowed to travel, which is the reason it's called "What's the Furthest Place from Here?" If you travel, you'll just get in trouble.
The government prohibits all non-essential traveling. There's
no government. There's no. That's the weird thing. There's no government. There's only the strangers who are out in the woods, and the kid, like the normals. Like this gives us a flashback. We see parents. The other kids have never seen a grown-up. So when you turn 18 or whatever, you get taken away. Or wasn't that someone said that was the original Logan's Run? I don't remember. I even read the book.
Yes, in the movie they get killed in that silly ritual at age 30.
Right.
In the book, they voluntarily submit to being killed at age 21.
Oh, it's 21. Okay. I even read the book. I don't remember. That was a long time ago.
The book's definitely more hardcore, and they don't waste. For the movie, they had that new age claptrap that they would attend.
Oh yeah. Carousel.
Carousel, yeah.
With current gas prices, furthest place is down the corner.
Yes, you Americans have already reached our gas prices from 2014.
Yep, I just filled up my tank today. I think it was just short of $5 a gallon. Cost me $28 to top off my tank.
So let's see how we're doing. Okay, times 3. Wait a minute, 1 gallon is what? 1 gallon. US is 3785.
Wilson's back.
Times 2.15.
Chris had to leave us for some other appointment.
Oh, okay.
But don't worry, we stopped yelling at each other.
Have you? Okay. I've had my share of debates about Liefeld over the years. Ever since I worked in the comic book shop.
Chris gets upset with him about people picking. He's just so tired of Liefeld being picked on, I think.
I can get that. I understand that conversation, but I agree with you as well in the sense of he earned it, which is a great way to say it too.
Yeah,
is that he earned it, and I agree with that. But again, it got to the point where it's like, I don't go into the huge conversations. My go-to line always was the reason why kids love his art is because he draws like they do.
No, I think he actually once said he figured out how to draw like a 7th grader.
My LCS owner came to the same conclusion.
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that.
And then it's like, and then I look at his career and I go, for all those faults, he has done. He's been constantly working for everyone,
constantly. He's one of the biggest winners in comics.
Completely, and that's where once I realized that to myself is where I kind of turned it around. It's like I don't go into the debates anymore because there's really nothing to say that hasn't already been said.
I don't have much to say either besides Chris getting me all worked up.
Right. But again, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, okay, yeah. I understand the whole thing.
I ignore the whole feet thing generally because, like I said, he in my eyes he earned it, but I don't care.
Right.
Nothing I could say could make his life worse, and I wouldn't want to. You know,
Right.
he like I said, he's one of the winners. That's fine with me, you know.
Exactly.
Someone,
But again,
I'm glad someone won it in
yeah,
comics. Damn it.
that's true. That's very true. You can't. Yeah, fault. He had a commercial.
Paolo will give you our gallon price.
Mhm.
Somewhere up around $7 or $8, I think I saw recently. Comic shops were told this week to hold off on putting out their trades. Oh, the Last Ronin until next week when the bookstores and Amazon. Listen, they got mad for it because they got mad about it because Books A Million ignored that and put them out. So I read that article. So comic shops were like, "Screw it, we're putting them out."
So they're breaking street dates.
Yeah, because I know a lot of times, at least Marvel and DC and probably Image too, make sure they're in the comic shops like a few weeks before Amazon and other places can sell them. And so I'm sure that's why shops were annoyed, because they're like, why? Because they're used to. I mean, why not? The comic shops are your bread and butter. Why not give them a few weeks exclusive selling whatever collected edition? Yeah, but that was just a. Like I said, I think it's fair that comic shops get a few weeks. And I don't think it'll affect the big booksellers' bottom line one bit.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Hey, Chaos in Comics.
Okay, so our gas is at a bit under $8.50 per gallon.
$8.50? Did you say?
Yeah.
Oh wow, $8.50. It ain't cheap.
Mm-hmm.
I was just talking. My LCS owner just came back from a vacation in Spain, where he drove. I think he said 3,000 kilometers. They were driving from place to place. I was like, that's a long way.
Yeah. Well, you have to be driving up and down as well.
Yeah. So I was like, from what I'm told, driving a long way is a shorter distance to Europeans than it is to us Americans, where there's a lot of places you can drive far away.
Yeah, let me put it to you this way: a 2-hour trip is considered a very long trip over here.
Yeah.
And we can do 150 miles in 2 hours, but it's what's not a long trip? 10 miles.
That's not a long trip.
But you shouldn't drive. Europe is not the best place to do road trips. If you want to go, if you want to go someplace, okay. But if you want to drive around in different places, no.
Did you buy any comics this week, Wilson?
I did not. I have not been able to get out. I've been finding that I could get comics on a Sunday. I could not make it to comic, on the day the books come out. I have yet to be able to find a time to do it. It's to me, it's like once I'm out, I'm out. Once I'm outside, I'm going to be out for the whole day. I'm going to hit all the spots. So whenever I'm in the city, because I'm in the Bronx, so I subway in. So I'm about an hour away from anywhere, really.
Right.
Or really half an hour, depending on the train schedule and what have you. So once I'm out in the city, then I hit all my spots. I'll hit the comic book shop. I'll hit Book Off. That's where they have used toys and books and stuff like that. I'll hit different places and spend the whole day out. And then I come home and then live a hermit life. But and I don't and there's not that many comic book shops that far away from me either. There is one I could technically walk to that's only 2 miles away, 4 miles round trip.
Right.
But it's like I don't necessarily like that shop. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with it. It's been there for years, decades.
But it's not your shop.
But it's not my shop. And I even gone there when I was in high school. But it's just the feel of the shop. It's I don't want to say it's not welcoming. It's just that I don't feel comfortable in it, for lack of a better term. I do when I do go in there, I do buy books. I'm more than happy supporting it. But I think I have more fun taking the train downtown.
It's like,
probably because I could do other things down there while I'm there too.
It was a few weeks ago. My friend Ed Murr happened to be visiting me on the day I was going to the comic shop. And he came with me to my shop. And it also happened to be, it was the day everything was late by a day. So it was a Thursday, which meant there were like extra people. So there was like 5 or 6 besides like Roy, the LCS owner, who's real friendly, I talk to all the time. John, who's also works there, real friendly, talk to all the time. There was like 3 or 4 longtime customers who I talk to whenever they're there too. So we were all just sitting there talking comics, introduce him to Ed. He's talking comics with him, he goes into the back. And it's also my comic shop is small, but it's all comics. Mm-hmm. There's no like pops everywhere and stuff like that. So, we hung out for half an hour, 45 minutes talking comics, whatever we go. We're leaving. Ed's like, wow, that's about the best comic shop I've been to in years and years. I'm like, yeah, that's because it's fun. When you know everybody and it's like a hangout and you can stand and talk comics. That, like you said, you can't do that in that shop 2 miles from you.
Right. That's the thing. There was always that home comic shop. I had one when I was in college. Mm-hmm. The shop that I would eventually work in myself at was that home comic book shop.
Right.
We could go in and you could talk comics all day.
Right.
There was one in Manhattan called Sleep of Reason. It was in the Village, where I got along really well with the owner. And I would go there after work, after Marvel, and spend hours there just bullshitting comics with him. Had nothing, I would buy stuff here and there. I wasn't getting my weekly books from him, but that was more a place to go. When I went there, I did buy books there, but it was more of the sense of just talking comics with them. Kind of Cosmic Comics was a home shop for a short while. Okay. But more of just because everyone was getting their
23rd
books
Street?
There. Yeah, because when I was on the 9th floor, that's where everybody was going to get their comics. When I went up to the 10th floor, I started going to Jim Hanley's.
Right.
Because again, the 9th floor guys would always go there at lunchtime. So I would go with them, and that's our time to get comics.
Some of the 10th floor guys who were rebels would go down to Cosmic. Okay. I remember that. John Blah used to go there all the time. It's funny you mentioned a hermit, your hermit in the Bronx. I think age has something to do with that too, because the difference between like in the 90s when I was working at Marvel, I used to stay in the city, even though I lived up here in Rockland. Sometimes I'd go down, I'd crash with John and Ed, we'd hang out all week. I'd go downstairs over the week, we'd be doing whatever. By the time the early 2000s came around, I was just commuting in, commuting home.
Oh, okay.
And it was like, I remember thinking to myself, I may not even. Here I am in the middle of Manhattan, and it made no difference because it's like I'd take a bus in, I'd walk from the bus station to Marvel, I'd work all day at Marvel, I'd walk back to the bus station, I'd go out. I'm like, there's like nothing I do in New York City anymore. This is so weird. It's like here I am with all this stuff around me, and I got nothing.
When I worked at Marvel, once I left, I usually left at about 6. I always stayed an hour later.
Right.
Just because I could. So once I left, I would just stay in the city most of the day and into the evening and be coming home at like 1 a.m, every day. That was just because, again, once I was out, I was out. And it's like, I obviously don't do that anymore.
No.
I'm out and then it's like, I got to get back before it gets dark.
Let's see. I've heard a good amount of praise for St. Mark's Comic Shop in New York City. Did you guys frequent?
I did.
I was there a few times.
I would go there when I was in that area. I was in that area a lot. I mainly went there to get, because they would have sales on everything, kind of a thing. So that's where I would get some trade paperbacks. I would get toys from there, but not the weekly comic books. Or I would go there if I couldn't find something in particular. But I always had fun going there. Not a talkity shop.
No.
I didn't go there to talk to anybody. I used to go there when it was you had to go upstairs to go to it.
Oh, I don't know that spot. Yeah.
So
it was downstairs.
Spot where it was downstairs, they used to be right above it.
Oh, okay.
And the store was split in two. So you would have to walk into one store to look at the comic book stuff, and then go into the other store to look at the toy stuff. That's how it was split up, because it's New York, so that was an apartment building at one point.
Right.
So and then they moved downstairs.
I was always annoyed by St. Mark's Comics because though they did have a lot of indie stuff, it was all jammed together. If you remember, they had in the back of the store, they had these wire racks. You know, the kind of comic book racks that are like go along the wall. They go flat along the wall, and each one you can put maybe 10 comics in the rack all along the wall.
Yes.
And they had them jammed with comics. Absolutely. If you could fit 10 comics, they had 17. And they had boxes jammed with the indie comics. So it was very difficult to look through. If you could find an indie comic, and they were all bent over because they were wire racks. Front 4 were bent over and wrecked.
Yeah,
and
unless it was bagged and board, it was just all wild comics. Yeah,
right.
I remember that. Yeah,
you could just. I liked the fact that they had a lot of indie comics, but they just didn't care about them.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, my shop is run by a young couple. They argue like Sam and Diane from Cheers. Customers joke. We don't want to be witnessing a domestic dispute. The atmosphere is like the TV show. It's nice. That's good. But yeah, that's my memory of St. Mark's Comics. I remember getting a couple of things from there, but I remember just being like,
Yeah, I found a lot. I would go there. I did find some of the stuff to be a bit expensive compared to other shops, again in New York. But St. Mark's Comics was a regular. Like I said, Sleep of Reason was one. Cosmic Comics. Then the Jim Hanley's. I remember the one that was in there was the second store that Jim had in I think it's Tribeca, is that area?
Yeah.
And
that was Midtown store now.
Huh?
So there's Hanley's pardon me, it's not Hanley's, it's Midtown. It's the second Midtown.
Right, store. Midtown has 2 New York City locations. And there was this I don't remember the name of it, but near the other Hanley's that was in Tribeca, there was a sci-fi store. It was a bookstore, but I would get my sci-fi books from there because they just had, like, you would bring in all your books and they would buy them for like 50 cents.
Yeah.
And then sell them for like $2. And I got a ton of Star Trek novels from that place.
Do they yell gore when you come in? What's going on, Mr. Vidal? Let's talk about what's going in, Mr. Vidal. What do you do? All of a sudden, I couldn't remember how to pronounce Gore Vidal's last name.
When the comic book shop that I went to called Phoenix Comics, when they closed down, it was like that was my last home comic shop, and that's when I basically stopped buying books on a regular basis.
My comic book shop grew up. It's actually, there were 2 shops, but my comic book shop opened in 1981 in Nyack and was named M&M Comics. And that was my shop until the late 90s when it closed. But I also went to, well, it was in a different location, but the shop I go to now with a different owner was opened in like 1983. We always knew it as the Paperback Exchange because it originally sold used paperbacks. But then somewhere around, I think they said it was 1983, they moved over. First, they started getting comics in too. Then they moved over to a comic shop. And it still had the Paperback Exchange sign up for 15 years or something longer than that. So it was always the Paperback Exchange to us. And then they moved. Finally, they like got rid of that sign and got a new sign, and it said like the Comics Warehouse. And we were like, is that the name of this place? We're called the Paperback Exchange because that was, that sign had been up for years until they redid the little mall it was in. Then I think it was like 15 years ago they moved to Pearl River, and I'm still going there now. But that was like my second comic shop. I had my pull list at M&M Comics, and then which all through the 80s was great. But then in the 90s kind of spun down a bit, especially when it was originally owned by a mother and her son, Marge and Mike, hence the M&M. But he kind of, by the late 80s, grew disinterested in comics. So he was in the store less and less. His mom was still there working and keeping the store going all through the early 90s and whatever. Then I think it was sometimes in the late, her husband used to come in too. Really also smoked a pipe, by the way. We're talking about pipe smoking and lighting earlier. He was a really nice guy too. Sometime in the mid 90s, he like had a stroke and died.
Oh, wow. And
like she had just been planning to retire like in a year or two, and it just wrecked her. I mean, all her, her husband died. All her retirement plans were wrecked. So she kept the store going for another couple of years, but it was kind of winding down all that time. So, my friend Rob and I used to go to the comic shop every week with me. We'd go to M&M Comics first, pick up whatever on our pull list, and then go to Paperback Exchange / Comic Warehouse and pick up whatever off the rack. So, and then when M&M finally closed, we moved our pull lists over to, or I should say I did. Because my friend Rob, for some reason, refused. He's like, nah, he just wanted to pick stuff off, despite the fact that he went to the comic shop every week, would pick stuff off all the wall. Pick stuff off the wall. And sometimes he'd be like, oh, did you get, they'd have to order him stuff because he didn't get it or whatever. And this was when the one guy, Chris, like there's different people working there over the years. And there was this one guy, Chris, who was working there. Matter of fact, I just saw him a couple of real nice guy, but kind of a no nonsense. He went to the army. He went into the army right out of high school, and so finally one day, he's always like, Rob, why don't you make a pull list? He's like, nah. So finally one day, Chris just made him a pull list, and he finally went, hey Rob, fuck you, I'm making you a pull list. Then Rob had a pull list because Rob was always like, I don't want to, not buy stuff if it's on his pull list. He wanted the freedom to not buy, but my shop is always like Roy's always like, I don't want you to walk out of here with a comic you don't want. So if it's on your pull list and you don't want it anymore, just hand it back to him and say, take this off my pull list. It's not one of those shops that's like, well, you order 3 months in advance so you can quit 3 months from now. He's like, nope, I don't want you walking out of here with a comic you don't want.
Yeah, it's a good way to think about it.
I'm known as the reader at my shop. The reader is here. Imagine that. The guy actually reads his books. How crazy is that?
What else are you supposed to do with them?
You put them in bags, and they pile up on the side here, stuff to read.
At least you mean to read them.
Yes, I mean to.
He's not buying them just for their covers. put in the PC, as it's called, the personal collection. If you're one of those slab and resell guys, you have your PC and your other comics.
No, I'm a lax reader, I guess I would say. I plan to read my books. I do own a few slab ones, mainly because I wanted to buy one to see what it was like. And
Right.
a buddy of mine bought one for me and sent it to me in the mail. One day I'm opening up, and it's like, ooh, fan mail. But it was just a buddy was just sending me a comic book. Not worth anything.
Yeah.
But then are the slab books really? I don't know.
Like I said,
because everything's being slabbed.
I've always wanted to buy a slab book, just like you said, to see what it's like. Then I'm always like, the cheapest ones are around $35, off eBay or something. And I'm always like, then I always end up going, I don't want to pay $35 for a $4 book.
Plus, and the problem with eBay, not everyone does it, but the problem with eBay in some places is they're overpricing for shipping.
Oh yeah, I'm talking shipped. The cheapest ones I can find are about $35, maybe $40, $35 to $45 shipped. And it's like, and it's a $3 book that I'm buying. A $4 book. It's not an expensive book, but because it's slabbed and shipping,
right,
it's got to be $35 to $40. The interesting thing happened with, once again, I've mentioned him before, Erod, one of the New York Warriors. He also does pressing. He's a book presser. So he presses his own books, and also you can pay him to press your books to get better grades. And he sends stuff into CGC all the time. So one of his videos weeks ago, he got a book back from CGC, and he was stunned by the grade. It came back a 7.0, and he thought it was a 9 point something. He's just like, I don't get this. So he's reading the grade. He's looking at it. I don't understand it. So he broke it out. He read the grader's notes, so said, okay, he still doesn't understand. Repressed it, send it back in, and got a 9.6 this time. So I think they just messed up his grade. He thinks so, too. That happens sometimes. I think that happened to ETA Nick once. But once again, he sent in a book. He got it back, and he thought it was a 9.6, and they sent it back as a 7.0, and he was like, he actually called and was like, dude, I think you messed up this grade. I think you didn't grade the right book. And they sent it back and they regraded it for him at the right grade. So I was like, oh, look at that. I guess they do meant because, even Erod was like, because they count a half grade is a grade. So like a 7.0 to a 7.5 is like a grade. That's like from, I don't know, fine to very fine, whatever it is. So it's like no book with a pressing should go up 3 grades or 7.0 to a 9. That's it. It's a half grade and a full. No book with a simple pressing should go up 3 grades. It just doesn't happen. So he's like, they must have messed something up.
Well, yeah, people can make mistakes. It's from what I understand, I could understand why a lot of people do have anxiety when they send their books out and they're just waiting. And I don't even know what the turnaround time is because I keep hearing different
it's
numbers.
Gotten shorter is all I know, but I don't
has
know.
It okay? Because it's like some people I know talked about 6 months or more to get their books back, and it's like that's a long time.
Yeah. Hello, Graphic Man.
Graphic Man who should be camping right now.
I was tempted to buy a Slab Shadow #1 from Mike Kaluta for the 1970s slab, which I already have and wouldn't mind having just for presentation, but don't really want slabs. But yeah. By the way, hello. Same. It's kind of like I want a slab just as a conversation piece. Then I'm always like, you know what? I'd rather buy actual comics. It's like I always say it's like. I don't want to pay $35 for a $3 comic. That's all it is. Mm-hmm. Just got back from the lake. Ooh.
Yeah. Well. Since he was camping, Grotto hosted the 4-color fossils this week, and it was a very chaotic show.
Wow. Since it's the 4th of July this week, this is 4th of July weekend. Shouldn't he be heading camping, not coming home from it?
No, that's the best time. Now there's not people there.
Right, you're right. He's missing out on the crowds. Don't want those crowds. Keep the campsite to myself. Yeah, I think I actually still have. I bought this in the 90s just for presentation. Hold on. It's the same thing. You know, I put my own comic in here. I've had various comics over the year, but it's a slab, but it's held together with screws.
Right. I've had those for cards. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this one's just, I haven't seen them in years and years and years. I got this like we all remember there. Well, Paulo doesn't. The early 90s when there was a comic shops everywhere because of the boom. And they had all sorts of crazy supplies for comics. And this was one of the crazy supplies they had for comic. This lucite, bag comes apart in two hands. There's just, 4 screws in each corner, and you put your comic in there and put the screws back in.
Yeah.
So I bought this just for the heck of it way back. It was probably like $10 or something.
Mm-hmm.
But that's always cool.
Yeah, it's a nice presentation to it.
Yeah. But I'd rather get some of those, more of those than slabs for the price. Though I do have some broken out slabs that John from the comic shop gave me. This is an actual slab that, he broke the comic out of. That I'm going to make some sort of art piece out of one of these. Mm-hmm. I still haven't, but I've got like 6 of these that. So I have actual CGC slabs. I just don't have a comic in them.
Right.
Why don't you slap one of those Cerebus in Hell comics?
I love those Wolverine miniseries. I was buy those from gas stations. You and Howler Mouse buying stuff from I never saw a gas station with comics. You and Howler Mouse were buying your comics at gas stations, though. Right? But like the comic shop, it's about a 20-minute drive from here. The comic shop opened in 1981. Before that, when I was the summer I turned 15. So by the time the summer I turned 16, my friend Rob and I would drive to there. What about slab? I was just thinking about that. I'm going to have to make up some more of them because we haven't done one in months. Mm-hmm. By the way, Wilson, this was a game we used to play on here that I invented. It's basically the F, marry, kill of comic books.
Okay.
I present 3, or Paulo does sometimes too, present 3 comic book covers. 1 you have to slab, 1 you have to read, and 1 you have to rip up.
Oh, even a bad book, I don't like the idea of ripping it up. But
no one does, but in order to play the game, you have to rip one up. That's the game.
Mm-hmm.
Someone always chimes in the comments like, I'm not ripping up any of them. I'm like, then you're not playing the game. That's the game. Like, you don't really have to rip anything. We're not making you rip any of your comic books. We're only ripping them hypothetically.
Right.
They're imaginary comic books.
I mean, it's a good thought experiment of like which one, because technically,
I'll set some up for next week.
All right, that sounds good. I would definitely enjoy.
It's fun, and it also gets us talking about old comic books too.
Yeah,
because I pick all sorts of old comic books that, might not have even seen.
But speaking of buying comic books in different places, there was when I was a kid and I would go visit my dad for the summers. He lived in Hoboken, New Jersey, and there was a video store that sold comic books.
Oh wow!
But they were connected to the Carvel ice cream stand, so they would have because it was a full window ice cream stand. So you would go and you order your ice cream from the window. So that was like, and I think you could go inside as well, but that was an enclosed area. And then there was on the side area where the video store was. And you knew it wasn't always a video store. At one time, it probably was a record shop.
Right.
It was a place that it was a family-owned place that would always change to whatever's popular at that moment. So I think the Carvel store was just there. and they ran the whole thing, but they also had the video store because that was the new hot media, was renting videos. So they would have comic books in there. So you would go in and they had old issues in these boxes. But the new issues would be on a wire rack, but also on the windows of the Carvel place. So ice cream and comics, I always thought was a great idea. And I always was like, you know what I'll do when I grow up? I'm gonna have a one of those ice cream trucks and sell comics from it as well. Because I always associated ice cream and comics for that summer. And that was the summer that I got into comics. So being able to leave New York, go to New Jersey, and it's like, oh, and I still have access to comics. That's awesome. And I always had a great memory with that. And again, it was just this window wall display of comic books. And you know how comic books look when they're out in the sun and how pretty it looks, especially the new issues. And it was like, that was always a cool thing. And it's like, I've been back to Hoboken and I couldn't even tell you where that place was, or even if the building was there anymore, because they went through so many renovations.
Those busted slabs would get good art pieces like your monster art over colorless comic. Yeah, only put a comic in the slab and ink over them. There's one. Like I said, I've been thinking of ideas, but I still haven't done them. Mom and pop convenience stores and gas stations, early to mid 80s for my comics. Then early 20s is comic book store. Jared, perhaps your section of New York wasn't too keen on selling reading material at filling stations. Yeah, Howler and myself grew up, it was more common. Yeah, it could be. Like I said, I don't. A filling station, they do now, but it's like most gas stations didn't even have like now all gas stations have like an attached little store on them. They didn't even have those when I was a kid. There was no even attached. So I think by the time the attached little store became common, comic books weren't common anymore, at least around here. So
yeah, I would agree with that because I never saw a comic in a gas station. No. I always picked it up over the years in it would definitely be in candy stores,
7-Eleven, candy stores,
7-Elevens, the Subway, and on the newspaper stands. I remember getting Ghost Rider #1 on my way to Shea Stadium just because they happened to have it in there. Actually, up to the 90s. You could get comic books in the subway stations.
Right. It was funny this week watching a guy debate buying a 9.8 slab Knicks #3 when he already had a 9.4. Started buying comics to slab a year ago. Has never read one. He's an impulsive collector too. He'll probably be gone from collecting in a little while. Those guys, they come and go because, that's a tough gig to be obsessed with 9.8s. Spinner racks that sometimes have 1 or 2 previous issues behind the newest releases. All the comic shops and all the stores that sold comics around me for a kid were very good at returning those comics. They had no 1 or 2 month old comics. Matter of fact, when I could find some little out of the way store, maybe somewhere at some time with like back issues in it, I'd be like, yeah, but it was so rare. I grew up north of Albany. Yeah, I'm down here in southern New York, the New York City suburbs. In the early 90s, my Moo Moo's ice cream shop had a comic shop too, called the Daily Planet. In Missouri, we had gas stations called Get and Go. I've heard of those in books, but I always thought they were making up that name, the Get and Go. The Gas and Go, the Get and Go, the This and Go. Yeah, it was a different world buying comics in the 70s and 80s. At least for us. Well, we should wind it down now and say good evening to everyone because we're just about at our ending time. Paolo can get to bed. Look, you're still awake, Paolo.
I am still awake. See, the whiskey actually kept me awake.
There you go. Whiskey and comics. Nothing like it.
Exactly.
We should have a show on
that. Why not?
You have to start drinking.
In my old age, I'm going to take it up. So I don't live too long. All right. Everybody have a good night out there.
All right. Have a good 4th of July weekend.
Yeah.
And
we'll catch you. We'll catch you all next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care.